Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in New York City, and we're joined by William Engdahl, an economist, a writer, a new book coming out soon in North America called The Power of Money, The Rise and Fall of the American Century. William Engdahl joins us to discuss President Obama's economic plan. Thanks for joining us, William.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
President Obama spoke a couple of nights ago in Congress. He spoke again this morning and has laid out his economic plan, which includes a major expenditure in health care, a stimulus package that will create, he says, will save 2 or 3 million jobs. What do you make of the plan?
It's a missed opportunity as far as I can read the small print. Of course, the headline is the $1.7 trillion deficit for the current fiscal year that he anticipates, but it's a hodgepodge of a lot of half-baked ideas. It's not tackling the core problem. What he's left intact is the cause of the problem of the economy, and that is a brain-dead banking system that's gotten out of control. What's got to happen to deal with this financial and economic problem is we have to go back and re-regulate the financial system. We have to reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act, which was repealed under the Clinton administration in 1999. That act was put in place for good, sound reasons by the Congress during the Great Depression to curb the abuses that took place in the Roaring '20s, where banks and investment banks were under the same roof and could have conflicts of interest galore, and did. And that was repealed after years of lobbying by the big banks. The repeal of Glass-Steagall in '99 was lobbied by Citibank and the big banks out of New York. They've been after that for years. They spent tens of millions of dollars on congressional campaigns to get there, and Clinton signed that into law in '99. Well, until we change that, until we redress that and re-regulate these financial institutions, we're not going to have a flow of healthy credit to the healthy economy. And that's what, so far, the Obama plan is lacking.
In his speech to Congress, he said there would be some kind of oversight, that this time when money is given to the banks, there'll be ways to insist they actually use it to give loans and get liquidity back into the system. Have we seen any signs of what that would be, and does that start to address what you're talking about?
No, I've seen no signs. The big touted thing about the stress checks on the banks that Geithner, Treasury Secretary Geithner, has been talking about the last couple of days, and this much touted private-public partnership is nothing but throwing more taxpayer money in a more convoluted way, so it's not so obvious as it was under the Paulson-Tarp program. But it's the same throwing good money after bad in terms of these brain-dead banks, these zombie banks. And this is a bottomless pit. They're talking already about doubling the amount, $750 billion more to these banks, and yet at the end of the day, they're not going to be any healthier than they were. They're just going to create a new bubble to exploit and plunder the population and parts of the economy. And this could go on endlessly until we have nothing left to plunder.
Let me play you a piece of Obama's speech to Congress where he speaks about this critique of bailing out the banks. Here's what he had to say.
It's not about helping banks, it's about helping people. It's not about helping banks. It's about helping people, because when credit is available again, that young family can finally buy a new home. And then some company will hire workers to build it. And then those workers will have money to spend. And if they can get a loan too, maybe they'll finally buy that car or open their own business. Investors will return to the market, and American families will see their retirement secured once more. Slowly but surely, confidence will return, and our economy will recover.
How do you respond to what President Obama said?
Well, show me the proof. Show me the proof. I don't, the people who are running this plan for the president, Tim Geithner, Larry Summers was responsible for the mess around the dot-com bubble in a large extent, was Assistant Secretary under Robert Rubin, who just resigned from Citigroup, but he's one of the arch culprits of this securitization debacle that's at the root of this problem. So I just don't see it.
They're going to wind up having fairly significant ownership pieces of the banks. Does that not give them enough power to insist on things that will solve this problem? Or is there anything short of nationalization that will do that?
Well, they're not doing it in the right way. They're not getting ownership. They're leaving the management intact. What they're doing is buying preferred shares that don't give them any voting in the affairs of the banks. So unlike what you had in Scandinavia during the early 90s when they had a somewhat similar real estate crisis, and several of the large banks there went bankrupt, the state stepped in. They said, okay, we're going to save these banks for the national economic interest and the good of the population. And when they're back on their feet and healthy and functioning, we'll sell them back to the private sector, which they did. And those banks today are among the healthiest banks in Europe.
Is there anything short of nationalization that would give them the kind of power to do that?
No, no. You need to put the largest part of the banking system through a Chapter 11 national reorganization. And call it nationalization, call it good bank, bad bank, but you really have to do this with consequence. Write those assets, those toxic assets, down to zero. Only the state can do that at this point. You don't find the market price for these things. Zero. And if 5 years later you can sell them for something, that's a plus on the federal budget.
It's your fundamental point. He doesn't seem to want to take on the Wall Street powers that be.
I don't see it. I don't see it in his choice of Treasury Secretary. I don't see it in his choice of Chief Economic Advisor Larry Summers. I don't see it in his choice of Economic Outside Advisor Paul Volcker or Ferguson or any of the team he has around him on the financial side. These are the people who created this mess in the first place.
So if William Engdahl was an economic advisor to President Obama, what would be the Engdahl plan?
Well, if you go back to 1934, when FDR was elected during a national banking crisis, a crisis not as severe as the crisis today, he declared a bank holiday. All banks in the country were closed for 4 days. Examiners went over those 4 days through the most important banks, sorting out their books and allowing them to reopen when it was clear that they were healthy and able to function as banks. But something more is needed today because of this securitization, the trillions of dollars of derivative products, liabilities that are out there and so forth. Credit, but that kind of an approach to the thing has to be done. Until you do that, until you really take this and reduce it, ultimately boils down to the following. Who has the power in the nation? Who has the power in the national economy? In Germany, in the United States, in Canada, wherever. Is it this banking financial cabal, or is it the majority of the population and the people who do the functioning of the real economy? And until the power of these financial Goliaths is cut down to size and in due proportion to the rest of the economy, we're never going to get out of this crisis. Simple as that.
Well, in the next segment of our interview, let's talk a little bit about the stimulus side of the equation, whether or not this stimulus package is likely to have the intended effect. Please join us for the next segment of our interview with William Engdahl.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the Real News Network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington is a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country's governed, it's going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said, in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the real news.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.